the Sustainability Management Master's Program, you're answering one simple question. Do you care about your future generation? If you care about your kids, their grandkids, then you care about sustainability. And a sustainability manager is someone who has the tools to make people understand how they can contribute towards developing a sustainable world. We have both part-time and full-time students. Our curriculum is 30 hours. Instead of thesis, we have a research project course and a seminar course which provides them with the kind of research background they will need to be successful in their job. But at the same time, sustainability is not always everything about environment. It also relates to the business. They will take a sustainable business strategies course. They will take a project management course. Most of these courses are going to be taught by industry people, the people who are doing sustainability on a daily basis as a part of their job. Any organization that has a large number of employees and has a physical infrastructure, they will have to have a sustainability office. If you have the passion to develop and maintain a sustainable world, come to us and we will help you shape your passion into a career which will create an impact.
Stevens Institute of Technology is proud to present the Hugo New Corporation Sustainability Seminar Series, co-sponsored by Geocentric Consultants, H2M Architect Engineers, Brown & Codwell, and BEM Systems.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for inviting me to this session. What a nice place to go to college, go to school, right? It's an honor, and I always love talking about land conservation. Just to gauge the audience here, who's familiar with the Nature Conservancy's work? Okay, so few. So we're a global, we're actually the largest environmental organization working globally. We have programs in, I think we're 80 countries and in every state here in New Jersey. We started as a traditional land trust, conserving land, and now we've moved on to river conservation, working a lot on climate change and policy work as well. And we've got a team of about 36 people here in New Jersey based in Morris County. Who is a New Jersey resident long term? Okay. Okay. All right. Who, often that correlates, who has Jersey pride? All right. Okay. Well, I hope you leave this session and you are more proud of the state that you live in. Okay. I'm taking a census now, and then at the end we'll see if I raised your pride level for New Jersey. Yeah. Who is familiar with the term when I say land conservation? Who is generally familiar with that term? All right. So what does that mean to you guys? Like, when you hear that, what does that mean? Yeah.
Protecting the land and making sure that we don't deplete it.
Okay. Yep. Yep.
Preserve the land.
Preserve the land. Yep. Yep. So when we use the term land conservation, I'll talk briefly about this. It means that there's a legal right to the land, so it's often acquiring it, the deed to the land, either through fee simple acquisition, like the state or a nonprofit will obtain legal rights to a land. Or we're also talking about regulatory structures. So New Jersey has a lot of regulations, and there's a lot of reasons why we do. But now, we can't develop wetlands, we can't develop in certain stream corridors, certain steep slopes. So those two things combined limit the development potential of land, right? So those are two methods that we use to conserve land. So this presentation, I'm going to give you an overview of sort of the status of New Jersey, and then I'm going to talk about what we are doing, the conservation community, and why I hope you're going to be proud, on how we're charting a solid future for the land holding in New Jersey. Sorry. Let me try this again. Oh. Okay. All right. So, why the New Jersey Conservation Blueprint? And I'll talk about this. So, blueprint some of you guys are engineering students, right? The idea is, what's the future look like in New Jersey? How can we ensure that New Jersey's natural resources are adequately protected? So there's a pretty urgent timeline in New Jersey. So we have a tremendous land conservation history. If you're a voter, and who's been a voter in past elections here in New Jersey, we have an 18 for 18 voting record on conservation ballot questions. So the residents here in New Jersey really care about putting their money where their mouth is. We care about conservation, and we are funding conservation work in New Jersey. Look at that stat. More than half of New Jersey is protected. Right? If you're not originally from New Jersey, you would not have that view of New Jersey, right? This is what you view of New Jersey, is the developed corridor, right? But 50%, more than 50% of New Jersey is protected. That's remarkable, right? So there's a good history here. The opposite side is a good portion of New Jersey is developed. And we are going to be the first state in the US to reach build-out. It's a term we call functional build-out, where all land is either preserved or developed. So if you think about European nations, a lot of those European nations, they've already reached that point. No state in the US has reached it until New Jersey. And we're projecting about 50 years. And development trends ebb and flow over time. And I'm going to talk to you about some of the recent analysis we've done with land use trends, and it's slowed. But about 50 years is our time horizon, which means that there are about less than a million acres remaining in New Jersey to either be developed or preserved, right? So this is the choice that we have. So the idea behind this, all right, so before I get into that idea, just wanted to give you a snapshot of the population. We are the most densely populated state by far in the US. I mean, the second one is Maryland, and we're about double the population density that they have. It's just under 9 million people. Population projections, we're going to grow by another 1 million people. Right now the projections are we're going to densify. The population growth are in places that are 90% built out, like Hoboken, like Jersey City, Bloomfield, et cetera. So we're about 1,213 people per square mile. We're more densely populated than India or Japan. Now, that's pretty remarkable, right? You wouldn't think that. I live in rural Sussex County, way far north and west, and there's fewer people. You come here, and we've built up, and a lot of people built in these high rises. If you've never been to the Walk Hill National Wildlife Refuge in Sussex County, extends into New York, I highly recommend it. It's a beautiful boardwalk. I'm also going to inspire you with nature shots here. All right, so the geography. All right, so this is a map of 2012, what New Jersey looked like. So red is urban, blue is open water, green is forest, right? It's just color coding the map here. 33% as of 2015, New Jersey is developed. 33% is urban cover. All right, so that you can tell the influence of New York City, and you can tell the influence of Philly, right? And then the connectors between them, right? So that's where our development patterns have spurred. And we're about 6% open water, so it's lakes, rivers, bay. The New Jersey territory goes out into the Delaware Bay, into the Atlantic Ocean. 30% forest, 11% farmland. So New Jersey in mid to late 80s looked a lot like this. A lot of rural landscape as you left Morris County, a lot of farms, a lot of forest, and they quickly began to transition into this. All right? The type of development that you see in Hoboken area, Jersey City, is like the compact densification of development. It's more appropriate for human habitation. You mix in the parks, the urban parks, the access to nature. This type is extremely consuming. We began consuming more land per person in the 80s into the early 2000s than ever before. So you have these McMansions built on 3 to 5 acres, and it just gobbles up huge swaths of farmland, huge swaths of natural habitat. So those were the trends we saw in 1986, and I'm just going to show you a couple of maps here. This is I guess you can see it. So pink here is what was urban in 1986. Green is forest or natural cover. Agriculture, you can see the stats below. So we had more forest land in 1986 than we had urban cover. All right, so it's about 1.6 million acres of forest, 744,000 acres of agriculture, and 1.2 million acres of urban land. So I want you to see these different changes. So 1995, you saw massive growth in urban development. 2002, we're getting closer. Urban development's now 1.4 million acres. Forest land still higher, but we're losing a lot of agriculture. You can see, just going backwards, 744, between 1986 and 2002, we lost a considerable amount of farmland. 2007 is the tipping point when the urban land cover reached the forest land cover in New Jersey. And up to 2012, we now surpassed it. All right, so 1.5 million acres of urban land. In 26 years, we saw 350,000 acres of urban expansion. Yes?
So is barren land, I guess, the land that's still left to be developed?
Yeah, it's a land use cover that often captures like mine lands or like that type of use. Like doesn't have a use, or they could be abandoned mines, or it could be active mine lands. That's that land use type. So I just want to show this snapshot. 2015. I don't know, does anyone use land cover data from DEP? Familiar with it? Okay. So I mean, the most recent data we have is 2015. So it's already old. This data that I'm presenting to is already old, right? So things have changed since then. So in 1986, point these stats out here, we had 33% of New Jersey's land area was preserved or constrained. So when I use that term constrained, that is those regulated acres that I'm talking about. Those are development is constrained. You could fill in wetlands, you just have to mitigate. So there is potential, you could still develop them, just makes it a lot harder to do it. So 41% of our land area was still developable, 1986. 2015, fast forward to 4.5 years ago, we are at now 52.9% preserved or constrained. It's a huge leap, right? It's almost 20% that we've seen in that time period. We've only seen a small growth in developed land from 25.8 to 33. So what we're seeing, these trends, is a huge arc increase in the amount of land we're protecting here in New Jersey and the amount of land that we're regulating in New Jersey, and we're seeing a much slower growth curve currently. Okay, so the conservation blueprint. So we got this report from one of our partners, Dr. John Hassey, who works, runs the geography program at Rowan University. He's been doing all of these land use analyses and looking at the trends. We got his report in 2015 from the 2012 land cover analysis. And we were extremely alarmed that we saw 360,000 acres of urban growth in that time period. And we thought, you okay? Yeah. And we thought, whoa, in my kids' 2 generations, we could see like some of the places that we care about gone. We need to act. We need to get together. We need to rally the conservation community together, and we need to protect the most important places, all right? And so we set out to create this green blueprint, if you will, for what New Jersey is. So the outcomes that we strive for is develop a vision that was necessary to accelerate the protection of priority places. And I'll explain what priority places is in a minute. We wanted to create a set of information, easy to follow information that was going to inform the next generation of planning, right? You guys are, I commend you for having these sustainability forums. That's what sustainability is, right? It's looking back, what can we learn from the past? How can we project that to make more intelligent land use decisions in the future, right? That's the essence of sustainability. So we wanted to create that information. I'll show you exactly what that is in a minute. And we wanted to, we felt it was extremely essential that we provide this information, this data that we've pulled together, in an innovative, sophisticated, really easy to use platform that anybody can access. You can access, as long as you have a Wi-Fi or a hotspot, you can access it here in a classroom, land use board, planning board, whatever. We wanted to get this information to decision makers, and we knew that it needed to be an easy to use and fast format. So what is the conservation blueprint? It is a shared living map. So we are constantly updating it with the most current information that we have. And again, I'll show you what it looks like in a minute. For those places that need to be protected over the next few decades, okay? And we identified those places that are important for protection of our drinking water supplies, our key blocks of forest that serve as habitat, the rivers and floodplains that we rely upon for flood storage and for habitat for species, our wildlife species, the threatened and endangered species that make their homes here, in addition to the migratory corridors that they need in order to adapt to a changing climate. That's really critical here in New Jersey. We happen to be in a pathway for migratory species. We also wanted to identify, we're the Garden State, right? We have an agricultural heritage here. We wanted to make sure that we identified those places that are most important to protect that agricultural heritage and our recreational areas. And we also, which is a work in progress, where are those places that are in dire need for the creation of city and town parks? Like the human habitat. It's really important, right? We do care about the native species in the big forest and the big habitat, but we also care about people, right? Places like this, the parks that we all rely upon for our recreation are super critically important. So the idea is that we've created this and we chart a solid future for future generations in New Jersey. So this is the group of organizations that worked with us on this. So it's a mixture of New Jersey, federal agencies, government agencies, nonprofit organizations. Some of them probably look familiar to you, some of them might not. But it's about 22 and continues to grow organizations, but these are the most influential land conservation organizations that work in the state of New Jersey. So I'm going to, I want to do a, I'm going to hand something out. If I can go, oh, if we can go, oh yeah. Firefox will work, yeah.
That should work, right?
Yep. All right, so Samir is handing out, if you want to follow along, you can do this. We built an entire web interface for people to access this information. So highly recommend njblueprint.org. All the information is on that guide, and there's a quick tutorial on how you can navigate to it. But there's just a lot of really interesting information. But I want to show you the maps that we had created. So when you go on the site, you want to navigate up into the top right corner and navigate to a map. So what we're looking at here is the best of New Jersey. This is the most important ecological lands that we have in New Jersey. I want to orient you to this web interface here. We've got a whole bunch of, this is all up-to-date data. This is the most up-to-date data. If you're, you guys like maps? You guys looking at this stuff? All right, okay. Definitely don't want to bore you with this, but so we have the most up-to-date open space. So I'm just going to zoom in. So the Pine Barrens, this is the Pine Barrens, Ocean, Burlington County. You guys have ever been there? It's remarkable, right? It's just an amazing place, unlike no other place on Earth, I think. You know, flat, sandy plains. But you zoom in, the green is the already protected lands on here, and then if it's not green, means we should be doing what we can to protect it, okay? The darker the color on here, the more important it is. So the purple is the best. So you may ask, I'm not going to bore you with this, but what, Eric, you say most important ecological lands, what does that mean, right? So we designed what we call a stacked prioritization model, okay? So we took all of the most current up-to-date data and we gathered all of these stakeholders and we said, why do you protect lands? Why do you care about land? Why do you care about land? And we took all of these values and we found what data existed and what didn't, and we came up with 4 standalone but stacked components. We eventually stacked them together. But we care about fresh water, right? We care about drinking water. We care about our rivers and streams that are important for fish and freshwater mussels and aquatic organisms, right? So we identified those most important lands for fresh water. So that's this model that you have here. So you can see it's pretty fast, right? So fresh water. So you can see along our river courses, the floodplains, the headwaters that drain water down into the streams. Pervious cover is a bad thing for streams. If you look at the literature, any watershed that gets over 20% impervious cover, that's when you start seeing pretty significant degradation in water quality. So we want to identify those places for protection that have less than 20% impervious cover. The other watersheds, still important. Those are more focused on restoration of the water quality in them. But if we want to target protection of the most pristine lands, it's those places that are still good. So that's fresh water. We care about rare species and natural communities. Right? We all care about threatened and endangered species, bald eagles, black rails, freshwater mussels that are threatened. So we identified those places in New Jersey that are hot spots for threatened and endangered species. So are you guys familiar with the Landscape Project, New Jersey DEP? All right, so they have a project that essentially did this. They have a rank. You can see here, and so there's always these drop-down menus. Please stop me. I'm really flexible. If you want to look at something, please let me know. But they ranked lands based on their importance for federally threatened or endangered species, state endangered, state threatened. All right, so the federal endangered, give you an example, is the dwarf wedge mussel. It's a little freshwater mussel that only inhabits a small handful of rivers in New Jersey, federally endangered species. That gets a rank 5 versus just a state threatened species that might be really prevalent in other places, but it's threatened and endangered. It gets a lower ranking. Right? So we took this data and we identified those places. So again, the darker the color, these blue spots that you see here on this map, those are the most important places for threatened and endangered species. Resiliency. My understanding is you had a resiliency, someone talked last week about resiliency. So the Nature Conservancy, we are basing all of our land conservation decisions on this single factor. Species need to adapt to a changing climate. Science is showing that species are moving further north and higher in elevation. We know this. We've been analyzing the data. So we needed to identify those places, and we did this for the Northeast at first, and now we're doing it across the U.S. So if you're really interested in this work, the TNC, we have this information. Just Google Nature Conservancy, terrestrial climate resilience, and a whole bunch of information will come up. But we identified these places that are most likely to persist regardless of the impacts of climate change. It's really hard to predict what's going to happen, right? Things are going to get warmer, are they going to get wetter, are they going to get drier? So we identified those places that have the conditions that we feel are necessary for species to persist. So we're often identifying places that have lots of options for species, right? If you're a species that only inhabits one type of habitat and you have no way of getting to another habitat type, that's a bad thing, right? So we want to identify those connectors, right? Those natural connectors. Or if you're a species that inhabits a riparian corridor or a ravine, you guys know ravines, right? These, you want the opportunity to escape either upstream, downstream, or up a slope, right? So these darker colors are places that are the highest priority to protect. Then terrestrial, which is our way. We're about to update this model to focus on habitat connectivity. So in other words, this terrestrial priority is identifying those big blocks of habitat that still exist in New Jersey. There's still some, those are forest cores, and then connectivity. So where are those connectors so that these habitat types can persist? We also have this really interesting data set here, habitats of high regional responsibility. If you always there's always more information. Again, if you go on here and you play on here, you do these drop-down arrows, and you can get more and more information. If you're a data geek like we are, you can just click on the more, and it'll take you to the data source, okay? So habitats of high regional responsibility. New Jersey, surprisingly, has some habitat types where we have 50% or more of its range across the East Coast, okay? So we have a lot of freshwater marshes along the Delaware Bay, and we have some of the largest extents of those freshwater tidal marshes than any other place on the East Coast. So we have a high responsibility to target and protect them, because if we don't, we may lose them range-wide. Does that make sense? Okay. So I recommend, I'm not going to be able to go through every data set on here, but I just want to show you some of the fun things with that we have to play with. So there's a lot of, if you want to look at rivers, you hit on the rivers layer, you hit on the stream layer, you can zoom in. If you want to go to zoom to where I am, I do want to allow access. It's thinking. We have a measure tool here. Okay. Is that yeah. It worked. It's always good. All right. To the building, right? That's the field out there. Yeah. Sorry. So we have the measure tool. If you want to zoom out back to the extent of New Jersey, you can. If you want to play around with backgrounds, okay? I tend to like being aerial label. That's where it has all the roads layered on it. If you're looking at, if you want to go back in time and look at what the land use type was in 1995, you can do that. If you want to look at historic maps or color, black and white, 1930, I'd be really interested to just take, those are served on the DEP server, so they often take just a little bit longer to load. We have boundary layers, so if you want to look at the town, this is really the most interesting thing. So if you're doing planning, most planning is done at the municipal level. We do a lot of our planning at the parcel level, okay? So this is always fun for people to look at what the parcel information is. So we have a separate viewer that will open up Parcel Explorer. And this is where we've begun to summarize some of the values that we've been talking about here. This is where you can look at tax records. This property is owned by the Stevens Institute of Technology. That's good that we're, right? So this is 2015 land cover. So it's 50% commercial service, 28% urban, 22% athletic field. That's interesting that this parcel is 22% athletic field. What watershed are we in? So we're in the Hudson River watershed. 100% of the land is in the Hudson River watershed. So it just gives you, you can play around and you can mine this information. I just wanted to show that. Yes?
Could you search by address or block and lot for this?
Yes, you can. So you can search. So you go over to the search tab here, and you can do by block and lot. You can do by size. You know, we did a fun exercise. We want, how many 1,000-acre parcels are left in the state of New Jersey, right? And where do they exist? You know, that are unpreserved, right? And you can click all the different qualities of those parcels, just how you want to search. Yes.
I'm working on a farm up in northern New Jersey, Marwa.
Okay.
800 Ramapo Valley Road.
Yep.
It's a preserved farmland. Preserved farm. I'm curious how, I've never used this map, but it's really,
Ramapo,
Ramapo Valley Road.
Mawa. Okay. So you can search. You see this little magnifying glass. You just type it in. Oh, it brought me right back to. Okay, let me search that again. Well, Don't do this on the fly. Yes. Other things, I'm sorry, you had a question?
No, I'm just
Okay.
curious, I'm just curious to see, you also had a field there where you queried preserved farms.
Yes.
Curious to see that in Bergen County.
So you want to see if there's any preserved, let me turn these off, preserved farms. Let me turn the parcels off. Parcels just muddled it. So you guys have quite a few parks here. I was looking, yeah, I'll take you to another map in a second. Yeah. So I have some, that's what's on here. So do you think the farm you're working on is preserved?
I'm actually working, I'm going to be working the land now.
Okay.
I might coming a
There it is.
farm.
Yeah. Yeah.
And there's not much large parcel of farmland in Bergen County. It's probably
Yeah.
just left.
Well, there's your farm there.
Yeah.
Yep. Right next to Ramapo Mountain
Yeah,
State Park.
It's really
Yeah.
nice. The river runs right
Yeah.
through it.
Yeah.
It's about a mile down from my uncle college.
Yeah. Okay. So other maps that we have. I'm sorry. Another question. Yeah.
Could you use this data to map trees and cities at all and their species types?
No, probably not. Yeah. You got a project? Yeah.
We did, yeah, my undergrad entire semester to do like those like miles around part of campus to identify every tree. It would take forever.
No.
For a state.
So I mentioned the human habitat side of this, right? So we, admittedly, we are conservation organizations. We tend to work out in, the more rural places, wild places in New Jersey. But we did have a number of organizations that were really interested in urban conservation and how do we ensure they're headquartered in Newark. Their mission is to ensure that every resident in the United States is within a 15-minute walk of a park. Right? That's a pretty solid. Space, preserved open space. So you have a park that's owned by a town or a city or a state. Recreational lands, often in places, we've done some work in Camden. The school has a baseball fields. That's often the place where people go and play. It's not preserved, but it's recreational lands, and that's where often most people are getting their outdoor time. Schools often have playgrounds. That's where a lot of the kids in urban areas get their outdoor time. So and this is pretty cool, they did an animation of distance to open space, distance to trails, distance to schools, and distance to recreational land. So I'm gonna let this play. Okay, so you can see, again, the warmer the color, the closer they are. The darker, the red's bad, right? Fire, it means this is a deficit. So for us as a conservation community, that means we should be investigating, like why are there no parks there? But we also saw, and this is, I have to say, caveats, this is a work in progress because we are trying to tinker with this model because places in Sussex County, like way out here, are coming up red. And you're like, well, there's lots of open space out there, right? Sussex and Warren County. It's because we mapped proximity. And they might not be within a quarter mile. This is how we did it. Quarter mile is a 15-minute walk. Half a mile is a 15-minute bike ride. A 1 mile is a 15-minute car drive, right? That's kind of how we did the approximation. We also mapped barriers. So you put Route 78 between, you have a house on one side of 78. In theory, you're less than a half a mile away from the park on the other side of Route 78, but there's no way you can get there, right? So you have to cross over them. So highways, waterways, so if there's a river between you and the park, train line, things like that. We mapped those barriers. And so we assigned a house a score based on their proximity to one of those things around those barriers. So we discovered when we start seeing these areas way up in northwest New Jersey popping up, it was because while they have plenty of open space around them, they were further than a mile. So we have to tinker with this model to really focus it in those built environments and exclude those areas because, well, we care about them out there, and we care more about the more urban and developed areas. So I'm just going to let this play, and I'm going to let you can see in the top right corner is what you're looking at. So I'll sort of bring it down to Bergen area. It's preserved open space. This is recreational lands. Distance to schools. Distance to trails, right? There's a lot of red there in Bergen County. So, preserved open space. So, we are now taking this information, all this information that I presented to you, and again, there's way more on here. I want to respect time here. Then I could possibly show you. This screen cooperates now. There's way more information. This is a rich, if you're into this stuff, I highly recommend checking out all these reference layers on here because this is where we started throwing in everything in the kitchen sink because the way we make decisions about where to conserve land in the built environment is a lot different. You know, we've got golf courses and floodplains and sidewalks in here. That's a proximity thing, right? There might be a park over here, but there's no sidewalks for people to walk to it. We viewed that as a barrier. And here's that land use barrier layer that I mentioned to you. So median age, this is where we put a lot of the census data in here. SNAP grocery stores, it's another. So if you're interested in getting up-to-date data, I highly recommend coming back to this site regularly. We are updating these models on an annual basis based on new data. This new 2015 land use, land cover data, we'll be updating these models probably over the next, we'll probably have them completed in the next 6 to 8 weeks. So I don't expect a lot to change. We just want them to be current in the most currently available data. We do want to point out a couple things. We do have the ability to, let me turn on the parcels. Let me reset this. If you go to the top, you can click on 15 data layers, and if you want to go back to the original screen, you just click this thing, and it'll wipe everything clean. All right. Let me do blank. I got to turn this off. So, OpenStreetMap. So we have parcels on here, and if you zoom down to the street level, and you do what's here, you go to Google Street View. So we wanted to make it, people look at Google 3D, Google Earth, Google Street View. Again, conservation organizations were like, this is an important property. What does it look like on the ground? And Google Maps is more current than the stuff that we have. So this is a highway here. Look at these. I wonder who that is in their car there. But again, there's way more information that I can present to you today. If you want to be inspired about New Jersey, take a look at this video. It's beautiful. Does anyone recognize that shot? Patterson, yep, Great Falls and Patterson. Beautiful spot. It's a 2-minute video. It's a little long for this generation, but if you sit down, it'll inspire you. Like, New Jersey has a lot to offer. We have a lot of rich, natural, cultural history here. The idea is, how can we preserve as much of it as possible before we reach this build out, right? And it's not like build out is a bad thing, right? Then once we hit that build out and we stop consuming the natural land, then we can start looking at redevelopment, right? We can take some of these brownfield sites, some of these contaminated sites, which we tend to ignore in some of these urban areas, and then we can start turning them back into human habitat or turning into parks for people in these where it's absolutely necessary. So with that, I think I'm at 5:45, and you asked me to stop at 5:45, and I'll take any questions or comments or whatever. So thank you for your time. Yeah.